She's April.
And she's Molly.
And we are
the Book Besties.
If you have a child that was born past 2010 and they are in school, DM us on Book Besties Pod on Instagram, TikTok, email us, fucking explain Ohio. Why is this a joke to them?
Yep, so much baby theft, you know.
And we kind of already covered that, so...
ADHD, baby!
Glad I'm not the only one who's wondered about that.
Come on over, but go the fuck home. I'm sorry.
What the hell was that?
I'm losing my voice, and I'm a podcaster.
Middle schoolers.
Hi, Addison. Everyone, please.
We have a special guest.
Hello.
Addison,
and I know
how
she feels. I lost my voice last week from dealing with the third graders, so
I am doing it is building week for Willy Wonka at Livia's middle school, and this woman who is good at props said, "You know what? I absolutely love working with children. I'll be more than happy to manage 20 of them to make sure they paint, build, and create props perfectly."
There were so many lies in that statement. You do not like working with children.
I tolerate children. I love your kids.
You have said on this podcast on multiple occasions how much you don't like kids.
It's not that I don't like kids. It's if I cannot treat your children the way I treat my children.
Just own it.
You know what I mean? Like, I can talk to April's kids like I talk to my kids because April's kids are well behaved. And listen, it's the children that are free range, wild little honey badgers that have never had restrictions. Never, ever in their lives been told no.
I'm telling you, this crop of middle schoolers and high schoolers are feral because of the pandemic.
I lost a kid. I lost a kid yesterday. Really? A kid just took off. He said he was going to go to the bathroom.
And
he
just
missed
never came
the
back.
scene, and he never came back. His mom's the fucking nurse. His mom's the fucking school nurse. So he just took off, and he's like, it's cool. His mom was looking around the outside of the building looking for him.
Molly, you're talking to a former teacher and a current teacher, and we can both tell you that kids don't just get lost on the way to the bathroom. They get lost on the way from the pencil sharpener back to their seat.
He just took off. Why? What? You've been in this building for 9+ hours. What is exciting about it? What is so mystical about this fucking smelly place?
He doesn't know why he did it either.
That's an excellent point. Just seized by the urge to wander off. And why not?
Not all who wander are lost, Molly.
No, they're just teenage boys with ADHD.
Yep. ADHD, baby!
ADHD, baby! How was your week, Addison, since I am sitting here just griping?
You know, the same as yours, it sounds
fantastic.
Like. I've got 26, 7, and 8-year-olds, so it's...
Right, but aren't they like English second language kids?
Yes.
So you have a little bit more leeway with Grace than I do, I think.
Yes. Oh, definitely. But sometimes they know that, and they use it to their advantage, you know.
Oh, facts.
I didn't understand.
Oh, yeah. I'm so sorry.
No, you know,
I don't
they're
know
so
that
smart.
English word.
They learn so fast, but they, you know, a couple of them kind of take it as an excuse to check out.
I totally had a Coastie friend that used to do that. Anytime they got in trouble, they'd be like, I'm so sorry. I didn't know that was an English word. What English word is that?
Yep.
Honey, you speak English more fluently than you do Spanish. Nice try.
Yeah, but they're a good group. They're a good group. Just very high energy.
Yeah, I do not miss being in the classroom. I really love being a public librarian now where I can literally have the kids for 30 minutes, maybe an hour at a time, but their parents are there and then they go the fuck home.
Yeah, nice and bite-sized.
Go the fuck home.
Go the fuck home.
That should be the mantra of the library. Come on over, but go the fuck home.
What'd you say, Addison?
I say the same thing, but then as soon as I am out of the classroom, I miss it so much. So for some reason, I keep, will continue to subject myself to it.
Hey, it's in your heart. There's nothing wrong with that, baby. There's a
quit
lot of people
teaching
that
twice, Addison, so I get it. I quit twice. I quit after 6 years in the classroom as a high school English teacher and after 2 years in a library as a school librarian.
Wow, I didn't realize that.
Quit twice.
Twice.
Yeah.
I'm grateful it's in your heart, though, Addison. Because I don't have that in me. So I'm grateful for people like you that have the time, effort, and energy and mental capacity to just be like, I'm going to have patience today with strangers' kids.
Only with the children, though. Patience with adults is 0.
No. I concur. Yeah. Hallelujah. Amen. No patience with adults.
0. Word.
Okay, so if anyone is wondering why we're talking to Addison, like we've already like hung out with her, it's because we have.
Duh.
You missed it, or you're new to
we're
pop,
friends already.
Or you're like, hey, I really like this book that Addison Armstrong wrote. I'm going to check out this podcast. We met Addison at Annapolis Book Festival in April of this year. And you were there talking about your second book, which is The War Librarian, which is top shelf, everybody. This is coming from somebody who does not read historical fiction. So read it. I'm telling you, it's good.
And this is coming from the historical fiction person on this podcast. April
I feel like it means more coming from the person that does not willingly read it.
No, I'm telling my historical fiction fans, the ones that came over because we did Discovery and were like, who the fuck is this chick talking shit? This chick that was talking shit loves this book.
Once again,
loves this book.
Once again, Discovery of Witches is historical fantasy, not historical fiction.
Anyways, Addison, we're so glad you're back.
I'm so glad to be back. Y'all are always a blast.
Yeah, something like that. Those are the words.
Or something.
Nice way to put
it. Or something.
Okay, so we're here to actually talk about your first book, which is this book, The Light of Luna Park. Look at that cover.
Such a good book.
Love it. Okay, so weird little facts about me. Originally, I went to school for journalism, and I entered college in 2000 because I'm old, and everything was, all the newspapers and magazines were going bust then because guess what had just been invented? The internet. So I was interested in like design, but I didn't want to be a graphic designer. Like I wanted to specifically do design with like, with newspapers. Mm-hmm. And I actually became a yearbook teacher. That's what kind of teacher I was. And so this is a long way of telling you that I absolutely love fonts. This font is so pretty. It's so pretty. That's a pretty font,
right? I don't see a lot of books with that.
No. I love the font.
There's
and
again.
I was trying to make the social media posts that will go up to advertise this episode. And I was trying to find a font similar to this. So I was like, so pretty. I love that font. So good.
Yeah, I can't take any.
Addison's like, I'm not giving you away trade secrets.
If I knew, but the covers are out of my domain. I maybe get veto power.
Well,
That's it? Really?
Yeah. They send it to me. They ask what I think. And if I like it, that's good. If I don't like it, they ask me again.
Are you sure? Are you sure?
Well, maybe take another look.
Yeah. The only thing I had a little bit of leeway for was for the Light of Luna Park. That is a real picture of Luna Park, but it's the Chinatown section, which is not at all mentioned or referenced in the book or anything. And it was like very clearly an Asian setting. Which I just thought was misleading. You know, you can barely see the little Luna in the background, but you could definitely tell that these were like Chinese buildings. And so I said, it kind of looks like it's in like the Pacific Theater during the war. Like it doesn't really look, it's misleading. Someone's going to pick it up not knowing what it is. And so they dimmed out, they like blurred out the edges.
I mean,
I don't want to correct the author here, but I'm going to, because I'm almost certain that at one point you do mention the Chinatown person.
I very well might. You guys read it. I wrote it, years ago. You read it a week ago, so you honestly know better than I do.
She's like, JK, I probably did. I don't know.
That's hilarious.
She's like, wait, where are my notebooks? What year was that? I gotta go to my archives.
When you were just still a sweet summer child and you were writing this when you were in college, which we're going to talk more about.
I'm elderly.
Yeah, 4 years ago.
I'm about to turn 42 and my leg hurts so bad that I want to cry right now instead of be filming this podcast. So, yay. Okay, so anyway, with that said, words.
Cover.
I lost the words.
Book. She didn't get a say in the cover. We're gonna go to the synopsis next.
I guess we might as well. There might have been something else there with the cover.
It's
brilliant.
Oh, I remember. You know, we always use the phrase "don't judge a book by its cover," and it's one of those things that we tell kids a lot, right? Don't judge a book by its cover. The publishing industry spends a significant amount of money making sure that you judge books by covers.
Mm-hmm. I mean, half of our books on Pod end up on Pod because you and I picked them by the cover.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean that's how you can tell what a book is. You know, it's historical fiction. It's got the woman facing away. It's romance. It's got the bright colors.
This wasn't thought out. Of course this was thought out. That is Remarkably Bright Creatures, which we're doing next week. The bright colors. That's also a really nice font.
It is a really nice font.
But you need that big orange octopus. Like
but honestly, but the woman on the front does not make me think Tova, though.
It's not Tova. We'll talk about that next week. That's not Tova. Okay, so anyway, can we do a synopsis? Did you want to do the synopsis, Addison, or did you want me to read what I wrote?
You go for it, because clearly you remember the book better than I do, so you're the expert here. I'm going to ask you questions.
She's like, I really came to just catch up because it's been a couple months and I really haven't read it, so I'm going to take some notes.
That's me.
Well, if you need to write a sequel, I just finished this book a few days ago, so I'll help you out.
I mean, I could help.
That seems like a better idea.
All right, so synopsis for this book, Light of Luna Park. So The Light of Luna Park is the first book by Addison Armstrong, our lovely guest. This book follows two women in... Oh, man, did you read all my typos in this? That's embarrassing.
No.
This book follows two women in different times as they embark on a journey to discover their own strength. Althea is a second-year nursing student in 1926 who has dreamed her whole life about delivering babies. Only Althea's life takes a very sudden turn when she puts her career on the line to save the life of a premature baby named Margaret against the wishes of the attending physician. Althea discovers the wonder of Dr. Cooney, who is saving babies at, of all places, Coney Island by using incubators. Stella is a special education teacher in 1950 who is advocating for her students as best she can against a principal who doesn't believe her students should be allowed to receive an education. When Stella begins the arduous task of cleaning out her late mother's apartment, she discovers she may not have known her mother at all. This book looks at the treatment of kids who are seen as unworthy in what was essentially eugenics in the U.S., both before and after Hitler. Gross. It is also a story about strength against impossible odds and what it means to be a woman in the 1920s and 1950s.
See, that was so much better than I would have said. I would have said, there was this nurse, and she went to Coney Island, so kudos. That was beautiful. And did I remember that she was a second-year nurse student? Absolutely not. Could not have told you what year she was in. So
you wrote this a couple years ago. We'll let it go.
Thank you. You're generous.
We'll let it go. I mean, we're a little disappointed you didn't bust out your notes and all that jazz in the first draft for us to read, but we'll let it go, I guess, about forgetting.
I cannot bear to read it again because every word I cringe. I'm like, I could have made that word a different word. I could have put a comma there. I should have.
I can't imagine what that's like as a writer who is constantly changing when I go through. Mm-hmm. I can't imagine seeing it physically in a book and just being like, fuck.
Yeah.
I can never edit this ever again.
Right.
This is not a living document.
I can't read it.
Like, mm-hmm. I cannot imagine because I cringe when I read shit that I wrote last week. So I can't imagine.
Yeah.
Right? So I can't imagine. I'm like, oh, no, I should have wrote this differently.
Right. And it's this nuanced thing no one ever would care about. But for you, it's like,
it's like stabbing you in the neck with a dull needle.
So I do not, I will continue to forget more and more and more as I do not reread it.
Take the W. Take the W. You have other historical fictions to write.
There we go.
This is published. It's in people's hands, so.
Which is why I can't read it.
I would just be happy about that.
Oh, yeah. I know. Take the
win. No, it's amazing. I so lucky.
So
we're not bagging.
No, not at all.
No, absolutely. Not at all. Like we're super proud.
So we talk a lot about on the pod. I joke about a lot how I'm just not really a historical fiction reader. And I think I might have told you this when we were at Annapolis, that my favorite book is historical fiction. And that's one of the reasons why I really struggle to like read historical fiction, because it's just set that bar for me.
Yeah.
I mean, it's To Kill a Mockingbird, and like, fucking hell, that book is published over 1 million copies every year since its first printing.
It's one of the most the top American classic novels.
Right. It's
like you can't.
It won a Pulitzer. Like, it was Harper Lee going, here's the best I can do. I'm out. You know what I mean? Like, she's remarkable. She never wrote anything else again.
She doesn't want to. She doesn't have to.
She doesn't have to. So for Annapolis Book Festival, a surprisingly number of authors that were there were historical fiction writers. And so I was like, okay, well, you know, I'll have to dive in. And I'll tell you, The War Librarian, that is what hooked me to your writing, because I am a librarian. And I was like, all right, Google, tell me if this is true. So I'm on ALA's website and I'm like, holy shit, librarians were really doing this. They were really like at the front. Like, this is what was happening.
And sorry, go ahead.
And I was just going to say, like, I love how much care you put into your research. So I want to know what really inspired you to write The Light of Luna Park.
Yeah. I got really lucky. I stumbled across an article about Dr. Cooney's baby incubators. And just for everyone who has not read the book, from 1903 to 1943, Dr. Martin Cooney, he told everyone he was a doctor. He was not. Ran an incubator ward at Luna Park on Coney Island. He also had one at Atlantic City and one at Dreamland in Coney Island that ran during that time as well. Yeah. And he charged people, you know, entry fees to come in and gawk at the babies. They were essentially a freak show, but they were cared for and, you know, maintained in this incredible manner. All the money that he made went back towards those kiddos. And this was something that hospitals didn't do at the time. Hospitals didn't have the resources, especially in terms of staff, to take care of these babies, which, you know, find the resources. They're humans, but, you know, I digress. Right. That's the other issue, that they didn't really feel the need to. You mentioned, obviously, the eugenics already, you know, and we could talk about that for hours. I mean, Hitler absolutely copied, you know, he read especially southern states, you know, Jim Crow laws and sterilization laws, and he modeled things after those. You know, we like to pretend that never happened.
We do that a lot with our history.
We love to just gloss over that.
I was telling my kids about slavery today, and they were like, "What?" Like they'd never heard of it, but they were ready to cry.
Go to work.
There is currently a textbook that says, in terms of slavery, when it's talking about slaves, they talk about them immigrating to our country.
Oh my gosh!
I've seen it where it says volunteer or we assisted in immigration. That was like from when I was in high school.
That is a bold.
That is unbelievable.
So when I was explaining this novel to Piper, because my oldest, Addison is familiar with my oldest friends. She actually, if you haven't seen us on Insta, Piper made a board game of Addison's
literally the coolest book.
A set, which I'll bring her in later. But she and I were talking about this book, and she's down. She's like so overloaded with school. She's like, I want to read this. And I was like, you're not going to have time until like summer. And she goes, what's it about? And I was explaining. And she goes, what do you mean? And I was like, I had to bust down eugenics, right? I was like, they really thought if these babies came out unhealthy in any way, shape, or form, that they were never going to survive. And that they pretty much saw them as trash. And she goes, what? And I go, so, because both my girls are premature. Both came. So Piper came because of an emergency surgery. I nearly died. She nearly died. I've talked about this on here. Livy was 6 weeks early. Both my kids needed incubators.
Livy was so tiny.
See, like they literally gave me a 6-inch sub to take home. Like she was so little, like ridiculous. But so I'm explaining this to my almost 15-year-olds who no idea about all this.
Yeah.
And she's like, so you're telling me doctors who took the Hippocratic Oath would let babies die? And I go, yes. And she goes, doesn't that break the Hippocratic Oath? And I go, Piper, for real. That's what we've been saying for bazillion
15-year-olds
years.
got the wisdom that all those doctors did not.
And it wasn't even that they didn't have... They could have had the technology.
Right.
I mean, they could have had it.
They had it in Europe. I mean, they had it in Europe, so there you go.
Incubators were inspired by, okay, this is me like reading your author's notes and like doing research because I'm a librarian.
What's the expression?
They were inspired by like egg incubators for like chickens. So this isn't like new.
People whose babies weren't born at the hospital, if they were born at home premature, people would literally put them in a shoebox or a hat box that they warmed by the fire and stick like a hot potato or something in there to keep the baby warm and take it to Coney Island that way. Like, people have been making their own makeshift incubators forever.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's as like my oldest was, he was not a preemie. He was 2 weeks early, but that's not a preemie. He was 8 pounds, 2 ounces, but he had some health issues. Yeah. He was big. He had some health issues.
He was long.
Fun fact, my sister was 10 pounds when she was born, and she was also 2 weeks early.
I've met your mother. That's rude of her. Your mother's a tiny woman. That is so disrespectful of your sister.
She was so heavy that her arm didn't work because she'd squished it in the womb. So it didn't work for weeks.
I'm sorry, that's not funny, but it is funny. I bet your mom's like just picking it up and dropping it.
You deserve this. Look what you did to me.
Anyway, we totally cut you off.
Sorry, sister and mom. I'm just teasing. I'm sure you guys are lovely.
We, tease each other.
So my son was in the NICU. He spent 5 days in the NICU, and he was by far the biggest baby in there, because there were low 1 pound babies in that NICU. Now, they were in a different part because the hospital where my son was born, which is Clear Lake Hospital in Clear Lake, Texas, Houston area, fantastic hospital. They have an amazing women's floor, and they have an amazing NICU. And so they have 2 different areas. And so the one area is for the little preemies that are like really needing a lot of care. My son was in the highest step. He was literally the biggest
almost graduating
in the NICU. But he had health issues, so he had to be in there for 5 days. And I think about the fact that, like, he was under Billy Lights. He was basically in an incubator. Like, he wouldn't have survived.
No.
And I thought about, and this was like, as I'm reading this, I'm going, this was my son. Like, this is a doctor telling me, your son is not strong enough, and this is God's way.
Could you imagine? Think about how little Livia was. Because that's what I think about. Because that's it. I'll send you pictures, Addison, later. Liv was so small. But she came out a fighter. She was 6 weeks early. They gave her steroids so that her lungs would grow. They had a helo and an ambulance waiting because they had no idea what was going to be wrong with her. She came out screaming bloody fucking murder. And they're like, cool, this kid's fine.
She's going to make it.
They literally just held her for weight because she was like 3 pounds and went down into the 2 range. And when they got her up to 4 pounds, they're like, you've had preemie babies. You can have her back.
But like, just like what Molly was saying, like with James, he came out screaming. I had an emergency C-section with him, and he wasn't even all the way out of me yet. And that boy was, I could tell he wasn't all the way out, and he was screaming. He was angry to be born.
And I mean, in your son's
defense, I was happy because I could hear that his lungs were working.
Right.
In your son's defense, he lets us know still to this day when he is displeased with things.
Let me tell you something. Today, I am having a lot of pain with this ongoing health issues that I'm having. And Sammy, my youngest, who's 7, Mommy, can I get you a pillow? Can I get you a snack? Can I fill your water bottle? Do you want cubed ice or crushed ice? Blah, blah, blah. So careful and so tender. And I'm like, James, can you turn down your game? It's a little loud. He's like, it's only on 36. I'm
Mom.
like, dude.
Put it down to 35 then, jerkface. 35.
Oh, that tweenage attitude just like bubbled up in him this year. I feel
welcome to the party.
Yeah, and you've got
really
girls,
fun
so
here.
I'm sure that's been fun.
All right, so let's go on to the next question. So this is crazy, everybody. I want you all to hear this. Addison wrote this book while she was a student at Vanderbilt.
Forget you. Forget you.
You were a junior? Is that right?
I was a junior. Really, everyone makes it sound so impressive, but it was easier to write a book while in college than it would be now when I am wrangling 26 humans every day. So lots of people write while they work or while they raise kids. That's so much more impressive.
Respectfully disagree. So how did you manage your college?
I'm not even going to say anything. I'm just going to look at you with disappointment.
Give me the look.
How did you manage your college classes while you were writing?
I did a lot of writing during said college classes. Will admit. All the teachers that
she's like, fuck this education. I'm smarter than them. I got this. I'll totally pass my teaching cert without them.
Well, and the thing is, my professors all came to my launch event, and they weren't bothered by that admission.
I'm gonna say they're taking credit. They're like, that was nice.
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. They're like, I created that environment. You know, I inspired.
All I'm gonna say is we need to start introducing our little authors that are like brilliant from a young age, because you need to meet Chessie, because she
wrote a book in college as well. Francesca,
that was high school. I thought she published in high school.
She wrote one in high school, and it was published, I think, like right after her senior year, but picked up during her senior year. But she wrote Eliza and Her Monsters, which is my favorite of her books. She wrote that while she was in college.
Yeah. We're going to just start introducing you guys in like this little genius author bubble. We're like, I wrote my first novel. We're going to find somebody that wrote their first novel at 4 so you guys can feel real stupid.
I mean, I won a Young Authors Award when I was in 2nd grade. Does that count?
That's precious.
Yes, it does. We've talked about that.
I met Beverly Cleary.
Did you really?
Yeah. I have zero photographic evidence of this, Addison, because I didn't realize the significance of meeting Beverly Cleary. And I got to go to lunch with her, and we went to Burger King.
You went to Burger King with Beverly Cleary?
Burger King!
How is that not the first thing you tell people when you meet them? Like, why didn't I know this?
Right? Hi, I'm April. I once went to Burger King with Beverly Cleary. You didn't.
Yes.
It's a hell of a story, but I have no evidence. Like, none.
Wow.
It wasn't until I was an adult that I was like, oh, that was
like... Wait a second, that happened?
Is this real life?
So, did it take you longer to finish Light of Luna Park or War Librarian?
War Librarian. It took a lot longer to do the War Librarian. The Light of Luna Park, I had no idea would get published. And it was just a fun hobby. It was, I don't want to do my homework, so I'm going to write. I don't want to listen to my teachers talking. I'm going to write. And it went pretty fast. I mean, I wrote it within a semester. I can't remember how long, but I think I wrote it.
A semester?
I think so. But it's funny because I wasn't paying attention to any, it wasn't like I started this day, wrote this many words, because it was just, for fun.
You were young. You didn't have to think about it. You could just dump.
Yeah.
When I was in college, I was going to clubs.
But see, you were having more fun. So, pros and cons.
I did have a lot of fun in college.
There we go. But the War Librarian, I was under contract for, because when we sold Light of Luna Park, my senior year, it was a 2-book contract. And so we actually got sent home for COVID in March of my senior year. So I had all the time in the world to write. And it was so much more difficult.
I bet. Well,
and you were doing research on the War Librarian because the War Librarian, a great portion of it takes place at the Naval Academy. And so you were like researching distantly with the Naval Academy.
Yeah, nothing was open every day. Every single day I checked the Naval Academy website to see when they were going to open again to visitors, because I wanted to go so badly. And my mom and I went, but it wasn't until the book was finished. I mean, I was in the very last, I think we might have been in copy edits even. We'd already done all of the developmental edits.
That's so it's just like,
now I can change the color of this, the number of pillars on this building or whatever, like these super small, irrelevant details.
But it bothered you, so it matters.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Okay,
and it was so cool going. I was like, this is where Kathleen walked. And I was like, wait, Kathleen's, I invented her. This is not where she walked.
Welcome to Book Besties. We talk about characters like they're real people.
They're real. So there we go.
Continue on.
But in a related
celebrity.
You are a celebrity.
Dummy. Duh.
2
books.
In a related note, we talked about your attention to detail, and you were like, you could, change colors. But what's interesting to me is in the notes that only we see in the magic of the podcast that I sent you, I put in the notes, I know you attended Vassar, which is where part of this book takes place, but it actually was Vanderbilt. And I was like, that is how good your research is. That like, I'm like, yeah, she must have went to school there. She knew about
I assumed it too.
I've had several people ask. Actually, my husband and I are thinking about going up tomorrow because
to Vassar?
To Poughkeepsie, to Vassar, just to, well, it's, fall, the leaves are changing colors, because I was at a book club in Newburgh, New York, a couple weeks ago, and they were all, in that area, and they were all shocked that I hadn't been, and they were like, you have to go. It's gorgeous. The library you talked about in your book is gorgeous. And I'm like, I don't know. I've never seen it.
And I kept picturing Emily Gilmore because she went to Vassar.
Well, if you want Emily Gilmore vibes, you'll need to head up to frickin' Ithaca. Go up to the Finger Lakes.
It's cold for me up there.
Stop it right now. You're a New Yorker. You get that cold shit off
not a New Yorker.
Okay, but last year was the most mild winter. We had like one cold day, and that's the only New York I've experienced.
Shit. You get the cold shit off the water. If you can tolerate that cold shit off the water, you can tolerate upstate. You know what I mean?
He doesn't get the Buffalo cold.
Ithaca isn't Buffalo. Buffalo.
To me, it's all just not the city. I really don't know.
No. True story. I was stationed with the same guy in 2 different locations, and he was from New York City, and I was from upstate. And he calls anything past the 5 boroughs Dragonland.
I have one of Jorge's classmates is from Yonkers, and they say he's from upstate New York.
No, absolutely fucking not.
I know.
As an upstater, no.
I know. He's like, I'm a Dominican New Yorker. I'm not from upstate New York.
No, you're not pale enough, and you've probably never been near a cow.
So funny.
I have nothing to contribute to this as an Ohioan, but
same thing though. Like that part of Ohio and that part of New York, same thing. Farms, people, nothing there.
We have more than barns in Ohio.
Farms, farms.
We have what?
Covered bridges. We went to Ohio.
We do have a lot of covered bridges. We also have Cedar Point.
Thing. We still make
you do have Cedar Point. I love Cedar Point.
And they just legalized marijuana in Ohio.
So it's not only like upstate New York, it's like New York City.
Wow.
I've seen so many tweets or Instagrams and memes like, if we don't get a dispensary that's called Ohio, I don't want it.
My kids the other day, we were looking at a map of the U.S. and they went, wait, Ohio is real?
Why is this a joke? What? Okay, if you have a child that has been born, that was born past 2010 and they're in school, DM us on Book Besties Pod on Instagram, TikTok, email us, fucking explain Ohio. Why is this a joke to them?
And I don't think my kids get it because they're all Russian. None of them grew up here, and so they just hear it and repeat it.
Don't comprehend this joke. Liv's, like the boys in Liv's grade, Ohio is the funniest thing in the world.
Yeah, they love it. They add everything in Ohio at the end of things, or from Ohio, or
like they share memes about Ohio. Like just physical pictures.
Yeah, I had a friend in Florida who thought growing up, she thought it wasn't Ohio. She thought it was Nohio because she would hear in Ohio and she thought it was in Nohio. She didn't know until she was like a teenager that and that girl was from Pennsylvania. Like you should have known.
Right.
You're the next door state.
That's amazing.
Oh my gosh. I love how on topic we are. We're doing great.
I was about to say, we're really
Let's talk about, we're trying to help her get this book like to people.
I mean, they're already getting the book. The book's already to the people.
Let's hope so.
All right. Okay. Blah, blah. And we kind of already covered that. So, okay, here we go. So Molly and I were both English majors. So when you talk about like you didn't want to do your schoolwork, you wanted to write, like that's what my schoolwork was. So
that's all I did.
See, I think that makes English it a lot harder.
Yeah, it does. So English majors would talk a lot about like different critics. Maybe Molly didn't, but we did in my school. I don't know. Molly went to a different school than me, but I really feel like your books can be like critiqued through using a feminist lens.
Mm-hmm.
So, are you intentionally writing like these early feminists, or for you, is it just you just like writing strong women in general? Like what's going on there?
That's a good question. I think largely I just write what I read, and that's such a prevalent thing, and especially in historical fiction.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's also it's interesting because none of these women would have called themselves feminists,
Mm-hmm.
and
Right.
I do get comments on Goodreads or whatever that like, hey, these are anachronistic characters. No woman would have ever thought that XYZ in 1900. And, I point out that, well, there were women, chaining themselves to things and, all
Right.
that for like suffrage, et cetera. I'm pretty sure it's not that weird.
I was like, how do you think we got the vote?
Right. Like, I don't know if it's,
How do you think we got the vote? There was absolutely women making a stink, or we wouldn't have the vote today.
Right.
We wouldn't be allowed to work. We wouldn't have fucking equal pay. Shut up.
We can
like, maybe it wasn't the prevailing, mainstream view.
Right. We can run even further, like, and go back to the Salem witch trials.
Right. There were always women who believed things that were different from what they were told. And I think that's sort of what I want to explore. So, I'm not fancy and I can't talk about like what lens you can view it through. Mm-hmm. But it's definitely intentional.
We're not fancy either.
These women are doing things. They're pushing boundaries.
They are.
In a place that's pretty hostile to them doing so because they're women or for whatever other reason.
And I thought for this book in particular, well, actually War Librarian too, because War Librarian also is two different times. Two different, what is the words we're looking for? I don't know. There's
timelines.
What'd you say?
Timelines.
Dual timeline, yeah.
Dual timeline. Yeah, whatever. So you've got that in both of your books and in different parts of history. And you're seeing these really strong women who are fighting against, they're fighting against a lot of things. In this book, we've got Althea is fighting against the doctors who are all men, right? They're all men, all the men doctors who are telling her these women's babies, they just are ready to die. It's fine.
Yeah. Suck it up.
It's no big deal. And
wealthy,
I don't know that everybody,
men.
Right. And I don't know that everybody knows this, but historically at this time, and maybe this was in your research, Addison, and I just missed it, but historically at this time, a lot of women were having, especially if your baby was born in the hospital, you were having a C-section. So you weren't actually...
forcibly.
Yeah, yes.
You didn't get a choice.
You weren't having a vaginal birth either. So having a C-section with my Sammy, when he came out, he couldn't breathe because baby's lungs actually get cleared that way. But when you're having a mom who's so like high on the painkillers or under the influence of painkillers, and you're telling her that her baby, that she might not even be strong enough yet to hold, like, that's crazy to me. These women deserved better. And Althea is pushing against that, as you know, and I think that's amazing.
Well, there's also
go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead, finish, Addison.
No, just that there's it was the way the nurses were treated, but you're right, it's the way the mothers were treated, that they are too fragile, they can't make these decisions. Margaret's, the dads make the decisions for them. They say, oh no, we're not gonna send her to that place. We're not gonna send her to Coney Island. And the women they're drugged. They're, like you said, forcible C-sections or, sticking forceps, all of these just inhumane, frankly, treatments. And it's incredible that anyone survived, frankly. But it's not just Althea. It's all of the moms in the book too that are fighting against this system.
Well, and the program that Althea was in was mostly women nurses, but that wasn't always the case either. There weren't a lot of women that were even in medicine at all at that point, right?
Yeah, Bellevue had the first Florence Nightingale-based women's nursing school. Go.
That's amazing. No, it's okay. No, I was just going to say that since we're talking about like all four characters of yours, there is a lens here too of morality for them, right? Because all four women are set with strict rules. They are given guidelines by men that are told this is the rule, but they are going against, they have to balance what is their personal morals versus what is told is right in modern day. So going over having that balance and mirroring that is something that carries over, not just from this book, from that book. I'm assuming whatever you write next, if you do another dual timeline, it'll roll over that way, because you can see you have a clear head, like voice and story when it comes to this, that you like putting these women, no offense, you love fucking with them. You love putting these women in a moral predicament. Right. You love making them go, shit,
what am I supposed to do?
What am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to do what my heart and my mind is telling me is right? Or am I supposed to follow the rule of man?
Everyone else is telling me.
Right. It's a very...
That's the role of every woman, right?
Exactly. So to this day, which is one of the reasons that I love dual timelines so much, because it forces us to look, you're comparing those two timelines, just, obviously, unconsciously or consciously you are. And that forces you to unconsciously start thinking about, wow, how much has and hasn't changed between not only 1926 and 1950, but 1926, 1950, and 2023.
You nailed it. And that is one of the reasons why I'm just going to go back to To Kill a Mockingbird. When I used to teach high school, that was a book I taught with my freshmen. You can actually see To Kill a Mockingbird behind me here. I taught that book to freshmen, and my first teaching job was in the middle of the West Tampa projects. Most of my students were low readers, and they had never finished a book. I mean, I'm not kidding. They were like, I've never finished a book. Like, I've never done that. And so I would read To Kill a Mockingbird to them. Sometimes I'm the only white person in the room, and that book is a really uncomfortable thing as a white person to read to a bunch of students of color. But I did it because I wanted them to read it. The discussions that we would have about that book, about how things had not changed for people of color, who had not changed for Black people when it came to the police, and the over criminalization of people of color.
Right.
That's what. Exactly. That's what you've got going on in this book here. Is I can see those parallels. And what I think is really interesting is with this one, you're writing 1920s and 1950s, and with War Librarian, you're 1940s and was it 60s?
76, 1970s.
So you've got 40s and 70s. So you've got that same, like now we have 20s, 40s, 50s, and 70s. So the next one you write, you need to do the 30s and the 60s.
And the 80s.
No, wait. I got an idea. You're going to do spars, and you're going to do women in the Coast Guard in the 90s and women in the Coast Guard during the spars era. So you can see how women have managed sexual assault, because I'm not going to be able to write that book without keeping my shit together. And I need you to write it.
Molly keeps saying, I need Addison to write my book. I need Addison to write my book. Because I have the librarian book, and our very good friend Nurse Katie has the Light of
You're writing me a postcard book, woman. I don't think you get a choice in it anymore.
Love it. One of my favorite things. Darn it, I'm going blank now on which, I think it was the WAC, the Women's Army Corps in World War II. Have y'all heard the story about the two women that were picked as the spokespeople for the ideal feminine WAC were lovers?
Yeah.
Unbeknownst. Yep. That's my literal favorite thing. And one of them was actually picked as to rat out other. They were like, let us know if anyone's, acting homosexual. And she was like, no signs of it.
Never seen any homosexuality in my life. Never seen a queer person ever.
That's my favorite thing.
Never.
Someone needs to write that book, because I'm obsessed.
There's so many great queer stories that come out of the past. I read a short article about two men who were pilots together for the British Air Force during World War II. And one died after they got split up, and he lived his life going to the bay watching for the other's plane to come back. He died at the bay. He was waiting for his friend to come home. His kids would take him. He pretended to have a normal life, and his kids would take him every Friday until he passed. And he left them a whole note about why he was always going there when he passed. Yeah.
That's heartbreaking.
Could you imagine dying and you're just living a normal life? He decided to just go straight after that. He's like, fuck it. I'm not going to be happy. I might as well have a family.
Oh my gosh.
If I can find that, I'll post that, because everybody deserves to have heartbreak.
So I want to talk a little bit about Althea and Stella both making sacrifices as mothers, even though biologically neither of them are. Right. So can you talk about the parallels of the sacrifices they make a little bit?
So I mean, Althea is obvious. She steals this baby Margaret, whose parents say no, or really her dad says no, we're not going to send her to Coney Island. It's not God's will for her to survive.
Gross, by the way.
Lovely. And I got that from real interviews with real
I don't
people
doubt that.
who said the person next to them was offered a spot and they said no, and so they got it instead. And here they are giving this interview 80 years later because they're able to, and the other person is not. But anyway, Althea, in taking away this baby, Margaret has to obviously give up her entire nursing career because now she's got this tiny little baby that she's stolen and she's visiting every day at Coney Island in the incubator, and no one can know who it is or where it came from. You know, there's this forged death certificate, you know, all of this illegal stuff that she cannot, you know,
so
she
much
also not
baby theft.
Yep, so much baby
theft.
So, such an ethical quandary.
That was on my mind this whole book. I'm like, you stole a baby.
I know. I always have to feel like I have to do a disclaimer since I, you know, am a teacher. I'm like, I do not steal children. I do not condone stealing children.
I mean, honestly, I'd let you sometimes.
Right? I feel like a lot of parents would. But she also can't, because we were talking about the restrictive rules before, she can't have a baby if she is going to be a nurse. So she can't pass it off as her own and keep working, even if she gets married. They had to be unmarried, white, preferably Protestant, you know, well-educated, all these very specific, you know, ideas of what a nurse was. So she gives up everything. This has been her whole life's dream, is to be a nurse, and she gives that up. Stella is not sure what she is and isn't willing to give up for real potential biological children that her husband does want. But she is willing to sacrifice her job, which, you know, is what gives her purpose, for her kids and for her students. And this comes early enough in the book that I think it's not, you know, a spoiler. The principal, lovely guy.
Swell guy.
Number one.
Just great. He has them, you know, their classes in a basement. Doesn't matter that a kid's in a wheelchair, you know, carry down the stairs, no biggie.
You're strong.
The school building
You'll figure it
that
out.
I almost got in here in New York doesn't have an elevator, and it's 4 stories. So I'm not sure what their plan is when they have kids that have accessibility issues. But
awesome.
I digress.
Awesome.
Again. So anyway, they're in the basement. They have no windows. They have no curriculum. They have no materials. She's like, I need materials. I cannot teach these children without stuff. She wants crayons and maps and, you know, some books, some really revolutionary stuff like that. Yeah. Again, things that teachers still, unfortunately, don't get a lot.
That they pay for with mesial. They'll pay out of pocket themselves for their classroom.
But they're judged by other teachers if they don't buy out of their own pockets.
Right. If your classroom is bare, they're judging you.
Right. And it's like, well, sorry, I'm not made of pets. But New York, like, I was shocked. My classroom came equipped with a library. Like, all of the books.
That's amazing.
That's awesome. I know. But, like, that shouldn't be amazing. How are you supposed to teach kids without books? That should be But in Nashville, I had to buy everything. Except
my sister was like that in Buford.
Crayons. They would endlessly supply you with crayons. I'm like, I don't use crayons. We use crayons like once a month. It's 3rd grade.
Because crayons break.
Yeah, that's true.
In Florida, they gave us $100 every year to buy classroom supplies.
That's what they did in Nashville.
Wow.
You need your receipt. You need to explain exactly what it's for. It can't be furniture. It can't be, you know, decoration. It can't be storage.
I bought books a lot of the times.
Yes.
But I would also buy printer paper because I ran the newspaper and the yearbook, and when we were out of paper, I had to buy my own. So
my sister.
So anyway, I got very off track here.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. We're talking about teachers.
No, go.
My sister was a public school teacher in Buford. She just recently switched over to private she had a desk built for her classroom when she started because she wanted a standing desk so she could work. And when she went to take it out of the public school, they tried telling her it wasn't hers.
No way.
Yep.
It's insane. Yep. It's insane.
It's like, she's like, you're kidding me, right? And she had all these books donated for her classroom. And they're like, you're not taking those. And she goes, Those are mine.
I'm the one that sourced them. I got them. Yeah.
Yeah. They weren't great to her either. Like she was, I'll tell you later. But
back on track.
That's a later problem.
Back on track. She asks for materials. Stella does. And the principal's like, okay, sure. And, she walks into school and there are boxes and she's so excited. And it's, drum roll, straight jackets.
Because that was the standard of care.
Straight jackets.
Because that was the standard of care.
It's unbelievable. He was like, this is recommended. And this isn't me. This isn't me trying to send a message. This is what the health industry, the medical world recommends. And it's true that the vast majority of children with disabilities were sent off to institutions.
It's facts.
They were treated, miserably.
What got under my craw the most, all of those kids were treated terribly, all of them. Mm-hmm. But the second language kids, the second language kids.
Who was non-native English speaker.
She was Italian.
She was Italian.
It's like she was in there.
And it's like still an issue. So we have elementary kids are underrepresented in special ed. Kids that should be in special ed are not because people say, oh, there's nothing wrong. Not wrong. There's nothing, they don't need any extra support. It's just the language. When they learn the language, they'll be fine. And the teachers are like, no, this is more than just the language. So elementary underrepresented. For years. But when they get to high school, they're overrepresented because they're like, what? This 17-year-old can't read English? Throw them in special ed, but they just don't know the language. So it's insane. It's still an issue in both directions.
Mm-hmm. As one of those kids that was on the line in the early 90s, they just decided not to put me in. So instead of getting me any assistance at all, I struggled.
It was like
I still can't do fractions. Every kid I know that was my age in that age group, during that time frame that was on the line, either had dyslexia, ADHD, something like that. If they weren't put in those classes, they were just pushed through. So they all have a skill that they never learned because they just kept getting pushed through.
Went on to the next.
I don't know fractions. Not gonna lie.
And fractions are a beast. Fractions are the worst.
As an inclusion educator, because my classes were inclusive. My son is also my oldest son is autistic, and so he has a special education teacher, but he's also gifted. So he's in a traditional classroom with special ed services, and reading the diverse needs of the classroom, of Stella's classroom. Some of those kids would have belonged in a much different environment. Yeah. Some needed to be in a contained classroom. We use all these terms now, but they weren't terms then.
Right.
They're a contained classroom versus an inclusive classroom. And I absolutely love when Stella starts doing research on exceptional children and what it means to be special education, because a lot of people who are not in education don't know this, but gifted education is also special.
Yeah, we learned twice exceptional. Your son is twice exceptional. That's what.
Yeah. But in general, gifted education is a part of special education because it is a special education that they need. The regular curriculum isn't rigorous enough to meet their needs. So I just thought I loved that. And I went to Bowling Green State University. What'd you say?
Oh, I just said thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. I was Bowling Green State University in Bowling Green, Ohio. Go Falcons. We're going to make a football bowl this year. Good job, guys. So Bowling Green is one of the teacher schools. I'm not just talking about in Ohio. Nationally ranked teacher school.
Yeah.
In 1910, when it was founded, it was a teacher's college. And so it is deep. We have a library that has an entire floor dedicated to education. You can go there as an ed student and borrow resources to make bulletin boards in your classes.
Vanderbilt had one of those. It was the best.
I love it.
The die cutting station.
Yes. And so when Stella, we did. We had a little Ellison machine. You could crank the thing. And so when Stella goes to Vassar into the academic library and she starts pulling those resources, I was just immediately transported back to the third floor of the library.
And that's literally what I did. I went down to Vanderbilt's stacks and I looked at all those really old special education books that had been there since maybe not the 50s, but the 60s. Right. And I cracked those open and I'm like, what were they saying at the time?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, what were the actual contemporary sources saying? And so that's where I got, you know, some of the things that she read were really things that I read.
I love that. Good job, Addison. That's good.
Good job.
I love that.
Star.
So I want to talk a little bit about Stella's husband, Jack. So he is a World War II vet who fought in France on I'm assuming the front line because France, so I'm just assuming. When he returns home from war, he enrolls at Vassar, which I didn't know that was a thing that happened.
Which was super cool to learn.
He meets Stella.
So random.
Yeah, it's so cool though. And he has what they're calling. What'd you say?
Oh, just 10 guys wandering around the campus. Like, I thought it was so interesting because we talk about women in male dominated spaces, but this was like the reverse of that in a weird way. Yeah. So I just couldn't help but stick it in there. But anyway.
What I really love is that they don't get a diploma from Vassar. They get it from
I know. So weird. The whole thing.
Weird. Anyway, he has shell shock, which is what we call PTSD today, post-traumatic stress disorder. So I was kind of wondering if you did some research into what some of those World War II vets were experiencing, if that when you were doing.
Yeah. Not extensively, but there is always research on, you know, every detail because, you know, when you're researching, you don't have to be physically writing. So it's a good procrastination technique.
You don't say. Never been
definitely. Yeah. You've never heard of that, right? I definitely did do some research on that. And it was another way that the medical world was failing its people in need. You know, I thought it's not Stella. I mean, it does become, of course, Stella's problem because she's married to him, but it's not her personal, you know, it's not her PTSD, but I want to include it because it's so important. You know, it's not only these kids who are being mistreated, and it's not only these women who are being mistreated, and it's not only the premature babies.
All of us.
But it's you know, they don't care. They don't care about this shell shock. You know, they just you know, some men just can't handle it.
And the government's still ignoring it today.
Right,
so,
exactly.
I mean,
so again,
it's still there's still PTSD running around in my generation of veterans who served during war who are just being ignored. Most of them wander the streets. Like many homeless veterans are suffering with some sort of mental illness or mental break because of their time in service. And it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking.
It's horrific. And that's, I mean, that's really why I wanted it in there because even though it's just a small part of the book, it's another, you know,
it's another sign
to compare.
It's a small part of the book, but it's a big part of Stella's life, you know?
Yes, because that's true. And it's a big part of so many people's.
Exactly. And I think like having her experience, like she wants to know what happened to him. Like she's like, I want to know because I have to know in order to know you. But he's like, I'm trying really hard to protect you from my trauma. Like, I'm not going to hurt you. I'm not going to hurt anyone, but I can't disclose this because it's my trauma that will hurt you if I do. And honestly, like, that was powerful.
And honestly, it would have hurt him more to relive it, explaining it out loud.
Right. I tried to,
else.
The scene where they're in the bowling alley and one of the balls crashes into a pin and he like hides. Like, that was just, wow. That was a very impactful scene for me. And I mean, I'm a wife of a veteran, right? And so Molly and I, given the fact that she's a wife of a veteran,
and y'all have more.
We have seen a lot of, like, we know a lot of people that have PTSD from their time in service. And like Molly said, we're talking about people our age. We're not just talking about veterans from, the Korean War and the Vietnam War. We talk a lot about them having PTSD. Absolutely. We're talking about people who are currently serving. So
and people who are not being served. Yeah. People who are not.
Yeah, I know. And that's another topic, like the underfunded and underrepresented. You cover that in all of your books. You highlight that even when you're not forcibly highlighting that. You're like, hey, look, you see this thing? It's still fucking broken.
Yeah.
And this was 1950 and you still left it fucking broken. Do you care? You know what I
And
mean?
I love
Like,
that you left hanging at the end of this book just a little sprinkle in there, the first African American woman to become a doctor at Belleville.
yes.
Just like this very tiny little sprinkle.
It's a hard line to walk because obviously I'm a very privileged, white woman, went to private university, all of this fancy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm writing historical fiction. I can't ignore these historical realities. So I try very hard, especially with the War Librarian.
What are you talking about? So many historical fiction writers just ignore reality.
Right.
On a regular basis. What are you fucking talking about, woman?
Okay, fair. But should not. So maybe instead of can not, should not. It's, all right. They're not my stories to tell, obviously.
Right.
So there's that fine line to walk between pretending that I'm the expert in, the African American experience or the veterans experience or whatever it is, and acknowledging that there is that experience.
As a veteran, that has watched, and seen firsthand some of this stuff, you represent us just fine.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because you do your work. You do the legwork. You know what I mean? And I can't speak for the Black community. I can speak for the queer community. I can speak for the veterans. I can speak for women. There's a lot of things I can't speak for, but the Black community is not one. But as somebody that you have represented in the past, I can say you do your work. Mm-hmm. You don't speak out of turn. And this is a metaphor, of course. You don't speak out of turn. You don't. Does that make sense? You say what you mean. You back it up, you show your receipts, and then you step aside and you let people figure it out on their own. And I
really appreciate that because it always feels like dangerous. No,
I
don't want to do it wrong.
And that's why I like your books, because I see the research there. And I have read some historical fiction where I'm like, oh my gosh, where is the fucking research? Like, I know more about this and I didn't even Google the topic.
Did you listen to Wild Girls and me ramble about freaking bobcats for an hour?
And Addison, I'm not just saying this because you're our guest and because we like you. I'm not just saying this.
No.
Like, I have texted Molly before we met you in April and said, I cannot believe the amount of intricacy in this book. She's telling me things about my profession that I didn't know. Like, that is what I'm talking about. That's the kind of research I'm here for.
Yeah.
So without giving the end of the way the ending of the book, but I have to talk about Charlie. Because I am a romance reader. That is my preferred genre. And so I want to talk about Althea's relationship with Charlie. Charlie's the handsome doctor. He proposes to Althea. Althea doesn't just decline. She runs away. She never even says no. She never
says no. She literally ghosts him. She's like, see ya
later.
She leaves the bugs. She leaves the Bugs Bunny, the Roadrunner dust behind her.
Literally moves out of the house where she's living. Yeah.
Right.
Could not. Yeah.
We do learn at some point that Althea does see him again. And do you,
words.
I want them to be together. So
I know. And I have book clubs that are so mad at me.
I need to justify it
that opinion.
I just want his gray eyes to be with her.
I know. We talked before about the sacrifice, and I think it would have been too easy, Yeah. Not really. She would have been miserable for 50 years still. So, really, I could have been a little nicer to her. But, that was the theme, in English.
But that's the point of this book, right? The mother's sacrifice.
Exactly.
And
so she has to sacrifice not just her job, but everything else.
What will we
Molly, let
give
her
up?
Finish. She's trying to defend this to me because I need her to, because this is the part I was talking about. Defend yourself.
So, fun fact about it, that last, towards the end chapter where she does see him again, was not initially in the book.
Really?
It happened. Stella recounts that it happened because she finds out, whatever. So it did happen. It was, in the story. And my mom, who was the first reader, said, you should really include that scene because I think it would be so much more interesting and powerful to actually get to read it. And I was like, Mom, that's such a cop-out. You can't just jump forward a bunch of decades and write like some random chapter because you feel like it. Like, that's not how it works.
I'll be like, Mom, I don't want you writing sex. Gross.
That too. So then
it's fine.
Yeah, it's fade to black. So then
it's fine.
Then the editor gets her hands on it and she says, you know what you should do? You should write that chapter. I was like, that's a brilliant idea.
Best idea
ever. I never thought of that. Ever. I can't believe this idea is brand new.
And my mom,
I could have saved thousands of dollars. Thanks, Ed.
Your mom won't let you forget it. Is that what she said?
You know, she goes easy on me, but I wouldn't blame her if she didn't. She gave me a look like, oh, you're going to add it in, you know, and tried to be all supportive when your editor said.
Give her a hard time.
Mom knows best.
I know. She
really Do it. You have free range to give her a hard time now, Mom. Do it. She said it here on here.
So I will, I will own up to that one. But I thought that was pretty funny, especially in a book about, motherhood, that I'm like, no, Mom, you don't know what you're talking about.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Of course she did. Because moms always do.
Such a daughter thing to say.
I was like, oh, no.
I know.
That was my loathing in this book. And I was so heartbroken over it. So I have one last character that I want to talk about. And then Molly has some writing questions. I'm not the writer. I'm just the reader. So I want to talk about Hattie. So Hattie is Margaret's mother, and she's a battered woman. She's in an abusive relationship. Her marriage is still going on.
Yeah.
Decades later. So she's still being abused decades later.
Gross.
And what were you trying to say with her story?
Yeah. I mean, there's the obvious connections of, here are these women all struggling in their different ways. And Althea, although she struggles, she does have a lot of privilege. Hattie, not so much. And I really just wanted to show that, there was just no way necessarily to get out of it. Women were trapped in these roles in these families, in these, they couldn't work, they couldn't do. She, if I read so much about, you go to a church and the church tells you made a vow in front of God. You go to the police and they tell you made a vow, with the state. Your husband gets to do whatever he wants.
Head of the household. That's how God wants it.
Decision. You need to stop disobeying him, and maybe then he'll stop, hurting you.
Can I ask? Sorry, you finish, and then I have a question with that.
No, go.
My question is was it Hattie was always going to be there because of Stella, right? And Margaret. But the choice of having her a battered woman, did that come post just figuring out, Margaret has to go with Althea? And you're like, I need to write something in here that makes it less morally difficult for Althea? Yeah. Was that part of your thought process, or was that
definitely
always
part of the thought process? It wasn't after. It was, as I was coming up with the whole story.
I was wondering if it was because we sometimes write ourselves into a corner, right?
Definitely part of the reason. It was like, okay, she needs a reason. Yes.
Yeah. Because I'm like, could you imagine if the moral quandary you put Althea in, if Hattie's just a decent human being with just a husband who ignores her?
Yeah.
And I think that could have changed your whole story. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
They would never forgive Althea.
Right. And I think, I've talked to people who even now think she did the wrong thing. Book clubs unanimously agreed that she needed to take the baby in the first place from the hospital and not let her die.
So I have to be on that side too, because I agree that she saved the baby's life, but the decision she made, it wasn't hers to make. It was not hers to make. You allude to the fact that Hattie is kind of giving her permission almost to save Margaret when she's, in the hospital and she's too little and she's like, can you please maybe do something? Even though her husband has said no, but it was not Althea's decision to make, to keep.
It was her decision to save the baby, sure, but not.
Because she medically should have,
and that's exactly why I wrote it, because I didn't want it to be too obvious. If Hattie and Michael were just this great couple, then it would be too obvious that she did the wrong thing. If, Hattie said, take my baby, save her, it would be too obvious that she did the right thing, or she went back and got permission, or she went back and... So it needs, I needed it to be sort of on the line. No.
It gives away the plot point. If Hattie just gives her the baby and say, take her and run.
No, that also defeats the entire point of the story.
Right. It buries your whole storyline. It gets rid of that moral quandary that Althea is struggling with the whole time. I'm not saying I'm good with the baby napping, but I don't know what the hell else I would have done in that situation.
Right. Well, and it drove the story, and it actually is where the idea came from, because Cooney was this fake doctor, like we said. Right. He was lying, but he saved 6,500 babies' lives through his, devious con manning. And so I thought, who can I invent that has the same exact quandary? And it's Althea. Yeah. She's lying and stealing and breaking the law, but she's doing it for the right reason. And that's, it was really that ethical question that I wanted to drive the novel.
It's good. It's smart. It's smart. So, okay.
And I think it's okay. And I think it's okay if your readers do not like that plot point, if they're uncomfortable with that plot point.
I am happy with the arguing back and forth.
Yes. I was going to say, I think that's kind of a point in this. But
exactly.
We're making an uncomfortable choice here. Yeah, and it's not in the name of eugenics and God's will. We're making this difficult decision for better, Yeah. And it's actually truly better. Not just... my baby's not going to make it.
And honestly, my favorite books are the ones I argue with her about. So if a book's not making us argue, what's the damn point?
Right.
So I'm going to bug you about some writing crap now.
Yeah. And I'm going to try to mostly be quiet because I don't do the writing.
So Luna Park was your debut novel. Duh. What was it like for you, a baby author, fresh out the frickin' book womb? What was it like working with somebody so big like Penguin?
Oh my gosh. It was shocking, first of all. Yeah, I got the call, my first call from Tara at Penguin, when I was sweeping in the student classroom I was student teaching in. So it was very incongruous. I was sweaty and there's glitter on the floor. And they call and they're like, yeah, we want to, offer you a book deal. And I'm like, a what?
You're like, say that again?
I was shocked. I mean, it just didn't seem real. We had sent to about 15 publishers, and Putnam was the only one that bit. But Melissa, my agent, said that actually Tara had been at the very top of her list. She said there were 2 or 3 that she was really, really hoping on, and Tara was one of them. And I was thrilled. And
yeah, I bet.
That was really all I cared about. They were trying to negotiate the advance, and I was like, I don't care. My book's getting published.
Honestly, as long as it's on that shelf. Yeah.
Right. So, that's more than enough for me. What was a bit scary was, when we were on the phone, again, first time I've ever spoken to Tara, she was asking me what other historical events or ideas I might have. And the way she asked it, at least my impression of it, though, again, I could have been reading it wrong as I was sweeping and dealing with a kid who came in because he didn't want to go to whatever. I could have been
teaching.
But my impression was that she was just trying to get a feel for whether I was interested in writing more in general. Whether I was going to be, okay, I wrote my book, I'm done. Or yes, I'm interested in history. I want to keep doing this. So I rattled off a couple random things. No real ideas. Just, this was interesting and this is interesting and this is interesting. And then when we got the contract in our inboxes a few weeks later, it said, this is for The Light of Luna Park and an unnamed second book that will be about librarians in World War I. Which was just one of the things I'd thrown out. And to give her the benefit of the doubt.
We'll write this one.
She's like, I like that. Give it to me.
We'll write that.
And, in her defense. Cool.
I don't remember that.
Right. In her defense, it was probably the one I sounded most excited about. But it was terrifying because, like I said, The Light of Luna Park was just a hobby between classes, in class. And now she's like, yep, we need this book, and this is what it's going to be about, and here's when we need it. And the deadline was not so scary because I work relatively fast, but just the having to write it at all and knowing people were going to read it and expect good things because they liked the first one was terrifying. So it was
the expectation of it all.
Exactly. So it was a total dream, but also very overwhelming.
So did you get to pick your editor then, or did they have their own in-house editor they preferred?
It was Tara. So the one we talked to, the one who bought it, she was the editor. And then it went to whatever copy editor and line editor.
So what was the editing process like for you? Because much of different editors, so some editors prefer a sit down where they just hash it out. Some take months where they push it back and forth. What was the process like for you?
She would read it and then send me like 12 pages of criticism.
Ouch.
I would have like a lot of things about yourself when you
2 months. The way I would handle it, because I'm not, accustomed to that. I mean, I was lucky I didn't have teachers that, they were all very supportive and encouraging and complimentary. I was like, what?
This hurts my feelings a lot.
So what I do every time is they're normally sent in like the afternoon. So I'll skim it in the evening. Smart. And then in the morning, I'll read it for real. And, skimming it's not so bad because I'm not really getting the details. And then reading it in the morning is not so bad because I already knew most of that anyway. And, it's just filling in the spots. And I found that that's like very effective. I don't really even bat an eye. I'll get frustrated if I don't want to make a change, but I don't get offended or embarrassed or feel, bad about myself, which is really surprising. I really thought I would. It doesn't really bother me. So then I have, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, whatever, to do everything and send it back. And then we do it again.
Right.
The first time for The Light of Luna Park, she, loved the book, loved, like obsessed. And then I sent her my first edits and she's like, what? You didn't do any of them? And I was like, yes, I did. Like I checked every single one off the box. And she said that it felt very piecemeal. Like I went to, she said this scene needs work, fix that. Oh, she said this. And it didn't feel cohesive. It didn't feel like the characters. And I was like,
oh, that's how I would think you would do it.
Right. I was like, I see what I was like, I see what you're saying, but I don't know how to fix that.
Right.
So I, as someone that went to school for that, like I was taught that shit. It's about starting and finishing together, right? Yeah. So when you're going through, so I'm assuming you went in, found that scene, edited it, jumped out, went to the next scene.
Exactly.
That's what you would do. That's why the notes were organized.
Right, exactly.
Okay, so as someone that learned this in school, they want you to go through slowly, read, see why it's not working, fix the transition, go back in. And I bet that's annoying as hell for someone that didn't get that education.
Right, I was just confused. I was like, I don't mind putting in the work again, but what? What did I do wrong? Like, what am I supposed to do? So I literally just blindly.
Addison's like outside, catch me outside. How about that?
Literally, I just like blindly do it again and send it, having no idea if I did it right this time. And she was like, "Oh, you really got it. This was 1,000,000 times better." And I'm like, "Yep, totally changed my method."
Totally.
So I don't know, but that's how it works. Letter, fix.
Nice. That's how you ran it. Nice. Okay, pantser or structured?
Pants.
When it comes to writing.
Except for World Librarian, I had to do an outline because contract.
Yeah, because contract. You're a pantser? Yeah. You did this? You did Luna Park pantsing?
I know the beginning and the end. And like, the very important
Do you not see the panic on my face?
See, I would have been used as a pantser.
I remember you telling us that when we interviewed you in Annapolis. And
I'm just so surprised. You're just so
level of research.
You did so much research. It just reads organized. I'm so proud of you.
I'm the least
As a pantser that is terrible. I am a terrible pantser who doesn't keep shit organized.
You have a map.
It's a map. Anyway, are you doing Nano?
I'm not. I was going to for like one day, and then the second day I was like, nope, can't do it.
Okay. Are you working on anything right now?
Yes.
Are you allowed to talk about it?
I'm not allowed, but there's not much to say. I think I mentioned to y'all, I'm working on a middle grades historical fiction ghost story.
In April.
Yeah, and that's pretty much done.
But you still
need
and that to the agent and such. And then I wrote a manuscript that is completed that I'm actually really happy with. Well, I wrote 2 manuscripts, one that I was not really happy with and one that I am. But the one that I am, that I really do love, my editor won't read it because it takes place during World War II, which is oversaturated, according to every publisher.
It is a little oversaturated.
But it also sells. So
right. I mean, women walking away is a genre. Women walking away is the genre.
That's the genre right there.
It's the genre.
So I don't know. So that one's on a shelf until they decide that it's
I'll
going to cycle
beta
back
it for
to
you if you want.
Until
I have some free time.
I become the most like famous author in the universe, and then they'll publish anything I write. But
yeah,
assuming that won't happen anytime soon, I am waffling back and forth between. I hate that word. My mom said someone waffled once. For like 6 years, I swore she made it up, and like I was like, that is not a thing. You do not waffle. That is not a verb. It's a delicious.
Isn't it wavering? Is it wavering?
Waffling is a real term. Waffling, I looked it up and I was so mad. Yeah. I was so mad.
That's weird.
And now I just used it and I am ashamed. Anyway, I'm waffling between going back to that one that I was not as happy about, that I wrote before the World War II one, because looking back at it, I don't think it's as bad as I thought it was, and writing something completely new, which takes place in not Ohio, but Iowa.
Not Ohio.
Not the same.
So I'm just thinking, it seems like if kids thought that a state wasn't real, it would be Iowa. Like Ohio, Ohio's a thing. I don't know anything about Iowa.
I mean, I didn't think Idaho was real for years. I was like, you're telling me there's a state that just makes potatoes?
I had no idea that Chicago was in Illinois. I thought they were separate things because Chicago's Chicago and Illinois is just Illinois.
Yeah. We're weird as kids.
Didn't you tell us in Annapolis that you were thinking about writing something to do with female pilots because of your sister?
Because of my sister. Yeah, neither of the two that I am talking about now have any aspect of that.
But your sister was 10 pounds and had an arm that just went. So, you got.
And now she's so small that she needs like 3 pillows to reach the pedals in her plane.
That's hilarious. Okay,
actually has to carry a pillow with her. It's
my final writing question before we set you free. What is dead in your graveyard? In your work in progress graveyard?
Yes.
What is dead? What is buried?
That I wrote, well, everything I wrote in middle school and high school. There was this one really great one about a girl that gets kidnapped and then falls in love with her kidnapper, because that's so
that's Stockholm syndrome.
That's it. Stockholm syndrome.
But like, come on, Beauty and the Beast, like it's not my fault. So that was
not my fault. It happens.
I found a copy of that I had emailed to a friend in 6th grade, and it was
good for you.
Special. It's beautiful. So that's dead. That's very dead and needs to be dead. But seriously, the manuscript I wrote before The Light of Luna Park, which I actually did send out to some agents, and they said that one timeline was really strong and the other not so much. And people have suggested since then that, I go back and just redo the second timeline, because the first one, but I don't even know at this point if I really love the first one that much. So I think it's just.
What was it about?
Wait a minute. Hold up. You had another book that you wrote in college before The Light of Luna Park?
The semester before. One semester, that one.
Addison, did you do college classes at all? Did you go to class and learn the things?
My husband
What's your middle name? I need to middle name you.
My husband was a biomedical engineering major at Yale. So, their joke was that Vanderbilt education majors just color all day. And that was the extent of my classes. So the fact that I wrote 2 books during it doesn't disprove.
I mean, I have an 80K dead in the water.
Your husband's not a published author.
No. Last time I checked, that man is not.
Not on your bookshelf.
Yeah, no. But
he is kind of in our bookshelf because
you do thank him in one of them.
You thank him, don't you?
Oh, you're looking at the dedication, and he's going to be so bitter about that. Yeah, he has not yet gotten a dedication. But he is in the acknowledgements.
And Jack, he can get something.
What book am I thinking of?
He is in the acknowledgements. He's in the acknowledgements for both.
Oh, okay, that's what it is.
Jack, so what is Jack is like kind of Jorge plus PTSD. If Jorge had PTSD.
Solid.
And was at a bank or whatever Jack does.
What was the premise of that first book that you're refusing to dig up?
It was about the Titanic, but not people on the Titanic, mail on the Titanic, because that's what RMS stood for. It's a Royal Mail ship. I know. When the Titanic sunk, like a ton, like as in
we lost so much mail. Yeah, there was so much mail that is gone.
And no one talks about that.
No one! Oh my God, do you know how many pets died on the Titanic?
All this mail. You can't tell someone.
Okay, I could talk about the Titanic and what happened on there for days. Days. Okay. You and I are going to talk about this off pod because the Titanic and your Coast Guard.
And you rewrite it.
I never knew.
Oh, we could co-write it. It could be a co-writing.
So fun. I've always wondered about co-writing, which is weird because I never liked group projects. They're the bane of my existence.
Co-writing's the best.
But
I learned.
Yeah, but as a person that's in a group project with Molly, I'll tell you, she actually does pull through. So.
Okay, we love you, Addison. I can't believe we have talked to you this long and made you stay with us.
Yeah, it went fast.
You think so? Well, good.
You think so? I just looked at the time and I was like, oh, Addison.
maybe when you publish the third one, you can come back since this was no big deal.
No, seriously, we're going to take the Titanic book and we're going to write a Coast Guard book and we're going to put them together.
There we go. That's the dual timeline, the new one.
First Coast Guard rescue swimmer.
That could actually work.
Or a first woman surfman. Have you looked into the surfmen of the Coast Guard? Oh my God, they're wild. They row boats out to rescue people. Literally, still today. Physically in rowboats. No ships.
Yesterday, Tom showed James a video of Coast Guard boarding a sub.
Oh, the guy that bangs on it?
Yeah, he jumped on top of a sub and was like, "Stop! Stop!"
That guy's name is Charlie. He was a second class 3 times. Yeah. Wow. If you know the military, do that math later, guys.
Right.
On that note, Addison, thank you so much for coming back again. This was amazing. Please keep writing because it's the historical fiction I actually enjoy. So please keep writing.
Seriously.
I really hope you're not offended when I say that I don't enjoy historical fiction. My biggest issue is that I am such a stickler for research, which is hilarious because some of my favorite books are, Twilight. So.
Twilight.
But see, Twilight fully embraces the fact that it's based on no research whatsoever, so it's different.
I mean, and we openly admit that Twilight is trash. You know what I mean? We love it because it is trash.
Well, even the science within the Twilight world.
Vampires don't have sperm, kids. No. They are not living beings.
Glad I'm not the only one who wondered about that.
Can't you we tried to beat that dead horse a few times on this pod.
There's a lot of dead horses we beat here. # not sponsored.
That's right. # not sponsored. Maybe someday. Maybe tell your fine friends at Penguin that we exist.
Yeah, if they,
She's like, they barely acknowledge me.
Exactly. It's, I'm small potato in the world, so.
Well, we appreciate your time, Addison.
Thank you all so much. By Luna Park. Her follow-up book is The War Librarian. They're both really good.
Do you have any signings or anything coming up soon? We can tell them to come see you. They can come see you, or do you have anything coming up? We need to promote.
I had something like.
Go to our website.
Go to my website.
Addison's website
on social media, and you can see how she created her dress for the Taylor Swift concert.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
Don't look at it up close because I'm not artistic. There are lots of smudges and missing,
Shut up.
Missing letters.
It was awesome. Okay, so next week, besties, we are reading Remarkably Bright Creatures by Shelby Van Pelt. It's got an octopus in it.
It's got an octopus in it. Who was voiced by the guy from Ugly Betty. In the audiobook.
I read the book. I did not read the audio, so I did not know that.
I read the audio too.
The audiobook's adorable.
We're wrapping out the month with this monster of a book at 500 pages. The fourth wing. There's no the.
Everybody and their mother is obsessed with it.
Rebecca Yarros. And if you don't know about that book, I don't know what to tell you because Iron Flame, the sequel, just came out.
If you don't know what that book is, where the fuck have you been for the last year and a half?
I want to be able to get off the grid the way you are. If you don't know about that book.
Seriously, tell me where you're hiding.
Right.
Because I desire to take a nap.
All right, Addison, thank you again. We'll see you next week, besties.
Bye, besties. Bye.
Thank you for joining us on Book Besties. Don't forget to like and subscribe. The views discussed here are those of Molly and April, not those of anyone else. Today's book was The Light of Luna Park by Addison Armstrong, who was our special guest. Your Book Besties are Molly Biggs and April Watkins, editing by Thomas Watkins, and music is Sleep Sweetly by Brigida. Don't forget to follow the Book Besties on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. If you'd like to contact the Book Besties, please email us at bookbestiespod@gmail.com or visit our website, bookbestiespodcast.com. Until next time, besties, get lost in your favorite book.